words on my lips and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. I wonder what the wilderness is for you. In our reading from Matthew today, we've heard that Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness. This reading in Matthew comes straight after Jesus' baptism, so it is in the very early part of Jesus' ministry. I wonder if we too often find that our wilderness experiences also follow times of great joy or deep spiritual experience and encounter. As we read the account, we hear Jesus go out into the wilderness where he fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. He was away from his usual support, not relying on his usual food or nourishment or his usual distractions. And in that season we read how Jesus is tempted. One way of reading this is as an ethical account of Jesus showing us that it is possible to resist temptation. And whilst we may not face the same temptations that are recorded here, all of us do face temptations daily. Temptations that draw us away from God, away from ourselves and away from each other. But I think there's something bigger going on here. I think Matthew is setting the scene for us about who Christ is. Matthew is very clear to present us an account of Jesus as the Son of God. He shows us Jesus the man, a man who shares fully in our human world and the weakness and struggle of going without food and living in the wilderness. For anyone who spends time around children, it tells us afterwards he was famished. It doesn't take children 40 days and 40 nights to get to the point where they tell us, I'm famished, I'm starving. It gives us an insight of the humanity of Jesus. He really was hungry after 40 days and 40 nights. For a world looking for a Messiah, I suspect many were hoping for someone a bit more flashy. Someone perhaps that would be flashing miracles everywhere, who wouldn't have to live with hunger or challenge, who wouldn't ever have to be hungry or famished. But Matthew is showing us that even in this wilderness situation, Jesus made the choice to trust in God. Jesus repeats his answers pointing to God. One does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. Do not put the Lord your God to the test. Worship the Lord your God and serve only him. Sometimes it's easy to get completely overwhelmed in a world that seems to demand quick, easy answers to every situation. And the story suggests that this is not new. All Jesus' temptations were for the quick, instant, easy solution. But each time he refuses. So I ask again, what does the wilderness mean for you? For some, perhaps it's a geography thing. Perhaps you like walking or hiking, to go somewhere particularly remote, to physically separate yourself from your usual comforts, to choose to spend time in a more risky environment. And when you venture out into the wilderness, I suspect most of us like to be prepared, especially anyone that was ever in the Scouts or Guides, to pack a bag, to take with us anything we think we might need and can carry. There are often dangers in a wilderness, or perhaps perceived dangers. Years ago, I remember spending a couple of nights camping out in the Rocky Mountains in Canada, and I listened very carefully to the instructions about what to do to reduce the likelihood of bears joining us in the cabin. It focuses the mind. Are we willing to respond to the Lenten call to visit the wilderness? I'm not aware of bears in Pennington. But are we willing to accept the challenge to follow a Lenten pilgrimage? And if we do, we should expect to face our own encounters in that wilderness. Firstly, as in our reading today, I hope you will remember the life of Christ, to reflect on his life and ministry, his obedience and surrender to God's call on his life. But secondly, if we're really serious about our own journey through Lent, I think we will find that we are led to face ourselves. T.S. Eliot wrote a poem called Ash Wednesday. It's a long poem, so I'm not going to read you the whole poem, but feel free to look it up later if you'd like to. But towards the end of the poem, T.S. Eliot writes, "Teach us to care and not to care. Teach us to sit still, even among these rocks, our peace in his will." Teach us to care and not to care. In Lent, we're encouraged to care for those things which ultimately matter. The theme for the Lent booklets is care for God's creation. But we're also called to leave behind those things which get in the way of our participation in the life of God and the life around us. That might be different things for different people. Traditionally, I guess people more recently have given up chocolate. I don't know if that's an issue for you and gets in the way of you and God. But perhaps there is something in Lent to look at that is getting in your way, and perhaps a time to be perhaps a bit less attached to it. In Ignatian teaching, Ignatius urges us to seek the freedom of detachment or indifference. He talks about making use of those things that help us to bring us closer to God and leaving aside those things that don't. Are we willing enough to be brave enough to consider detachment? And I wonder if that's perhaps the scariness of the wilderness, because the wilderness forces us to let go of some of the things we're attached to. Yet in the wilderness, it's a space to be honest. We remember with honesty the way things are, who Christ is, and who we are. And as T.S. Eliot says, we will learn to sit still. Some of us find sitting still so much harder than others. But in that sitting still, to find our peace in his will. And this is the invitation of Lent, to follow in Christ's footsteps, to move through the wilderness of our own self-deception, and to live in the truth of Christ, and to encounter the peace of his will. So are we willing to be separated in some ways from our securities, from the attachments in our life, the things that we hold close? Are we willing to live lightly to them, to come closer to the truth about ourselves, and to come closer to the God who calls us, who loves us? This Lent, each of us is invited to respond to Christ's loving invitation, because his invitation is always open to every single one of us, to God's love that is always there. And in the wilderness, if we're willing to be open, to let that love in, even among the rocks, in the sparseness, the barrenness of the wilderness, even there, I would actually say especially there, we can encounter God.